One.
Hi, I'm Katie Kraft.
I'm Grace Herzog.
I'm Joseph Parr.
And we're presenting Rediscovering DeLand, Restorative Archival Research.
Okay, so we knew that we wanted to do a project where we could actually help people in underserved communities in a broad and effective way. So on my end, I looked at the Public Health and Community Needs Assessment Report of Spring Hill. This allowed us to really see what people in Spring Hill actually said they needed.
Absolutely. And another helpful resource that I found was the West Volusia Beacon. It's a local newspaper that really does a great job of trying to tell more sides to the stories and the history of this area than a lot of the other newspapers. And we also had a wonderful interview with a man named Sidney Johnston. You can see him pictured there. He is the Assistant Director for Grants, Sponsored Research, and Strategic Initiatives here at Stetson. And he really encouraged us to take a step back, look at the whole picture, and tell the whole story of this area. He showed us the need for restorative archival research, and he kind of helped us form the goal of increasing funding to areas like Spring Hill that have historically lacked that resource. And so now we hope to foster mutually beneficial relationships between those community members and the policymakers.
So after we looked at the needs in our community, we had to figure out a way to fulfill them. So the goal we chose in order to do that was to restore some of DeLand's historiography so that it could be used to analyze and improve the neighborhoods that it documents. The way we chose to go about achieving that goal was to create uniform methodology for 3 types of historiography: directories, newspapers, and censuses. We also figured that while we created that methodology, we might as well test it by completing some of that research ourselves in order to make sure our methodology was effective.
So we had to determine which types of historiography would be the most attainable to do by the time of showcase. And we chose to develop the methodologies for the directories and the newspaper articles, and then implement the methodology for the directories. So pretty early on in the process, we developed the methodology for directories on March 12th. And then on March 29th, we developed the methodology for newspaper articles. And then in early April, we did the 1907 and 1911 directories.
And in terms of the delegation of roles, Katie was in charge of creating the methodologies first and foremost because she had the most experience with that type of work. And Joseph and I took the 1907 and 1911 directories. And then in terms of community partners, we already talked about Sidney Johnston, who was a huge force in this project and will continue to be going forward. And then in the future, we hope to partner with the city of DeLand after all of this research is synthesized. We want to bring it up in conversation with them and see where we can go from there. So this is an example of a directory, and basically it's a local version of a census. And so what you see here are a bunch of names, and some of them have asterisks by them, and that means that that was a person of color. So those are the people that we were mostly looking at for this project. And so at the top, you can see a screenshot of our Excel spreadsheet where this one is the 1907 DeLand City Directory. And so from this directory, we would pull the names, the spouses, the house numbers, any locational data that we could find, their community, whether that be a state or a specific part of the area. And one of the more interesting pieces that we looked into was their occupation. And so that told us a lot about the demographics of the area and the different forces at play during this time. And so those were the main things that we pulled from the directories. Of course, we would denote the page number as well so that we could go back in the future, not only us, but future researchers, and look again at all of these entries. So those are directories.
The other type of historiography we focused pretty heavily on was newspaper articles. And there are 2 ways in which we process newspaper articles. The first is, as you can see in the visual aid we provided for you, a lot of the newspaper articles about this topic and from this time were relatively hard to read. So we took them and transcribed them so that you would be able to read them just like you could read the text to the right of the newspaper article. The text to the right of the newspaper article enumerates how we did the second way we process newspaper articles. In that, we would search for a newspaper article by a community or by the influential community member in which it discussed. Then we would process it using this columned system that correlates to the columns of an Excel spreadsheet. This project gave us a lot of learning experiences. For me, it showed me how to scale a research project of a much larger scale than what I've worked on in the past. So one of the things that I especially got taught through this was that time is a lot more fluid than it seems.
Yeah, one of the things that I learned was that when you're dealing with new research and creating new methodologies, you can't really predict how long certain things, certain aspects will take, and you have to spend a lot of time and deliberation, really just figuring out what things are most attainable within a given timeline.
Absolutely. And being flexible is so crucial, both with time and with different tasks and delegation. And that teamwork aspect is so important. And that's something that I learned from this.
So because we got taught that time is fluid, we have some short-term goals for very near in the future. One of those is to develop and implement methodology for the censuses. And then we're going to further implement the methodology that we had already created for newspaper articles. And then in order to make sure that we can complete this project in a timely manner, we'll recruit future researchers so that we have more manpower to finish the job.
And then for long-term goals, and pretty much the entire reason why we're doing this, our long-term goal is to designate Spring Hill as a federal historic district. And then once we do that, ensure an ethical distribution of funds so that funds actually get to people that need it and people that live in Spring Hill.
Thank you for your time. We hope you've enjoyed our presentation, and we hope that you're as excited as we are to explore more of the history of DeLand.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.